and welcome to Little Seams. And for this project, we're going to be making a little fishy plush. So for starting materials, we will be needing, of course, paper to trace out the pattern pieces, a pencil and eraser, and a ruler, just in case there's measurements needed. Felt always, we need something to sew with. And the pins and needles, and more pins, just in case. Thread, of course, and scissors to cut everything out. I have little snippers and a seam ripper in case something goes wrong. And of course, some sort of marker, which later on the pen does not work. And a corner turner just in case. So, one of the reasons why I'm making this gray fishy that I'm going to make today is because I want to use as a prototype for a different project, Magikarp. A little Magikarp felt plushie. But there's just some things that I gotta figure out, like what stitches I'm going to use around the edges, and how I'm going to sew all the pieces together, how the tail is going to work, if things are going to be 2-layered or 1-layered for the fins. And so I just need to plan these out, and in the long run I would like there to be like a website with PDFs so other people can make them, but that's like an entire effort in order to put a website together, and that's going to take a little bit of time besides the prototyping, so just going to be having to do this one first. But it does end up pretty cute, so I hope you like it in the end. So for this section, what I ended up doing was I had this drawn sketch and I just overlaid it with another piece of paper, and thankfully this paper is a bit transparent, so I was able to accomplish this. I'm not entirely sure if everyone will have such paper, but I just traced out the pieces that I needed, if I'll get to it eventually here. Just marking as to what piece it is and how many pieces I need to cut of it, and then shifting it a little bit to the side so that there's space between, and drawing out the next section. And in the end, when you cut everything out, you should have all of these pieces. So with the body, the fins, the scales, and that little piece I just left in the full paper for a bit because it'll be a pain in the butt if it's cut out by itself. And for the fins, I put a little bit of a seam allowance since they're going to be kind of sewn along the bottom. And with the other ones, you're going to see we're going to have to add a seam allowance. So remember when I said earlier that the black pen didn't work? So for this, I ended up using a yellow chalk marker, and even then, it was kind of really difficult to mark this gray felt. It really wasn't the best choice for it, but it's what I had to work with, so I'm going to persevere and get through this. And you'll see the little issues with trying to outline it as that goes on in fast forwarding. So here I realized that I had accidentally made the head in gray, and so I'm retracing it out in the white. And in this I am using a pink chalk marker, and the pink and white really was a far easier combo to work with than the gray and other colors. And I ended up also doing the fin pieces and the bottom of the fish's jaw in the white. So while I'm fussing with all the little felt pieces here and putting them whereabouts they'll need to be in the end, let me talk a little bit about little seams and what it's supposed to be. Of course, it started with the little cat toys, but not everybody has cats, and I don't think everything you make you want to be thrashed around by a little kitten claws. And I hope to make more little projects. And like I said before, perhaps even with the website with little PDFs of the patterns so that other people can print them and make them at home. And besides small, cute projects with little seams, I'm hoping when I get good and get better, I can make some practical and pretty simple clothing. Um, Not very fancy or elaborate, maybe some someday, but not like any of the really fancy, elaborate things, even though I really like the historical sewing channels and such that come across my feed. But all of that will have to come in good time. And so back to the fish, now just retrieving the dorsal fin, and that is about what it will look like in the end. So here I'm just tacking down the white part of the fin onto the gray part. I guess the gray would be kind of the more structural part of the fin, and just going to hold it into place while we work. And then over here, I'm just finishing it down with the blanket stitch, as you can see there. And to do that, we will just be passing it through the back stitches, kind of in between them, of course, and then through the back, and then back again through the front. And you'll just want to make sure that the thread gets looped over the needle, so it gets looped onto the thread as you pull it, and there you go. I find that it results in a nice little slightly decorated edge, but then also helps to pull down and keep in place that edge of the white uh, felt, so it doesn't just get flimsy and flippy flappy, which is good for some things but isn't good for everything. So I really like the blanket stitch. I use it a lot in this. And so here I had learned a little bit from stitching that first side and attaching the scales, fin, and head. And so for that, I just stitched the fin, the scales that is, onto the body part to keep it in place. And then I'm just going to do some back stitchings along those sections to pin it down and create a little bit of a sectioning of the scales. Here, while I'm sewing, my cat visits me. I think in this clip we can hear her purrs a little bit. She's just really cute. And so now with the scales and the fin sewn in, it's time to get the other side of the head attached. So just holding it placed in there, and I do recommend pinning it to help it stay in place, and just securing it with some back stitches like this. And again, just back stitches, and just make sure that you get all of the fabric and not like missing an edge of the scale or fin, and then it has a bit of a piece that comes out. Did I mention that I like the blanket stitch? Because like I said, we're going to use it a lot for this project. And again, just looping it over the needle as you come on through the top in order to get that little stitch look. And that's largely what's going to be used for the entirety of the body, for the top and the tail and the bottom and all of that. And so it'll just be your blanket stitch all around. Now when it comes to securing the dorsal fin in, I just do some back stitches into the felt in order to secure the dorsal fin in place. With how the blanket stitch is done, it's a little, I don't really think it's really possible to do to do it with such a piece sticking that far up. I do figure out a little way to get the look of the blanket stitch a little bit, but it's not as nice, I think. Now for the belly piece, just putting the triangle end near the tail, and once again, blanket stitch all the way down. Now it came up about an inch short near the head, and I just cut out a little bit of a scale piece and sewed it in, and that actually worked out really well. And that's where I'm going to be sewing the bottom part of the head with the white, again with the blanket stitch, and going to attach all of that. And of course, the same to do with the other side as well, from one end to the next. Now, with all of it done, and you can see the stitches that go along there for the white part of the head, and it will need to be stuffed. And there's the belly and the fin tail base. I end up sewing a little bit. And so here is the tail, and as you can see, I sewed a little bit of a barrier between the body and the actual tail, and do blanket stitches all around the exterior of the tail, then just do some normal back stitches along where it will connect the white bit of the fin to more of the body base of the fin. And so now tail finished, mouth finished. I had stuffed it, and it only really now needs eyes, I think. But it is a squishy little fellow, and it is rather cute for a little thing, whether or not my cats will play with it. And so now it's finished. It has its eyes, it's all stuffed and squishy, and I honestly think it's pretty cute for a little fishy plush. And so thank you for watching. That will be the project for Little Seams today. And as I'm learning all of the stuff with recording and making videos, I will say that I think the hardest thing is simply recording the voiceovers, because after talking a long time, your throat, and it's very, very tiring. Anywho, thank you for watching all the way through, and until next time, take care. Bye!